Hey everybody, Elizabeth Nader back with you, Jersey First TV and the Nader Narrative. We are talking about Ukraine tonight. Incredibly important that we in this country understand the humanitarian crisis is happening over there as a result of the war. And there are many things that we don't know and many myths and many things that we need to learn about. And to bring you all of that insight, I am proud to have on our show Mark Di Ionno, who is a journalist, in fact, a Pulitzer Prize finalist journalist, veteran, and New Jersey all the way. So Mark has been over there. He has been helping out with the humanitarian crisis. Mark, welcome to the show. The first thing I want you to just share with people is your background, because I think it's interesting what you've done, and it gives you sort of a different worldview.
Okay, thank you very much, Elizabeth. I was a columnist at the Star Ledger for many years and a journalist for 40 years. It sounds funny just even coming out of my mouth, but yeah, 40-year journalist. And I'm also a military veteran. I was a Navy corpsman in the 70s, and so I was post-Vietnam, Cold War veteran. And so for me, this situation is one that, I feel we have been fearing, but for which we've also been prepared since the end of World War II. And when the bombs started dropping, and I began to get a sense of these sanctions and the things move in slow motion if you're in action, kind of thing. I just decided to go over and see what I could do to help with the burgeoning humanitarian crisis. And I signed up for the Territorial Defense Force, which was going to go and support the Ukrainian army. But because I'm 65 and I've been out of the service for 40 years, I offered to do some backline medical support, not frontline, and they didn't get back to me in enough time. I'm a very impulsive person, so I just got on a plane and I flew to Warsaw, and I rented a car. And I made a stop in Lublin, which is about 100 kilometers from the border, overnight. And by the next morning, I was at the border and just, make 2 or 3 turns. And all of a sudden, you're in a situation where you're in a checkpoint and there's need. There's these refugees are coming in. Donations are pouring in from all over Europe, all over the world. They have to be sorted. They have to be sent back out to the border. Right. And so I spent 10 days basically working there with Caritas, the Catholic Relief International Organization. And at night, after loading the trucks or unloading the trucks and bringing stuff to the border, I would either take people from that reception point deeper into Poland, or I would go down to the train station in Helm, which is pronounced Helm. It's spelled Chelm, right, which is really the biggest town closest to the border, about 20 kilometers away. And you have to understand the border is very, very, very rural. I mean, there's the town that I was working in, Dorusk, this big reception point has 857 people. So even the Polish people that were there to aid in this humanitarian crisis had come a great distance. And there's no hotels and things like that. It's not.
Well, it's a small town. Yeah. They're not set up for this. I mean, Mark, how many people are we talking that are streaming into Poland daily? Do you have any sense of that?
Well, I know there's been 3.6 million people that have left Ukraine. Poland has the biggest border. They won't go to Belarus because they're afraid. They won't go into Russia because that's who they're trying to run from, Elizabeth. And I think one of the epitome of the whole conflict for me is I took a woman and her two daughters, teenage daughter and a kid around 10. They lived in the sector that's being bombed by the Russians, where the 8-year war has been going on. And she lived 10 kilometers from the Russian border, and she was given safe passage into Russia. She chose instead to go 586 miles across Ukraine to get to Poland and get to freedom.
Wow.
And that's what it's about, And so these people are paying this enormous price for freedom. The men, 20 to 60, are asked to stay and fight. So the refugees are largely women and children. The snapshot of a family is usually a woman in her late 30s or mid 30s with, a couple of kids, 3 kids, and her mother-in-law. And so this woman is, dragging the whole family with them, with whatever they could carry.
Right.
And it's really, it's a lot of people. I mean, so Warsaw has about 2 million people. So in 5 days, their population swelled by 17%.
That's incredible.
With over like 225,000 refugees.
And then you've got the volunteers coming in to help with that. You're one of those, of course, but there are many others that are coming from around Europe and around the world to help process the refugees, help deal with all the supplies coming in. Is everything able to get in? We have people in New Jersey who are giving a lot, especially at the Ukrainian church here in Whippany. And are you seeing those items come over? I mean, for the most part, when people are giving, is that actually making it over there?
Well, I can't speak for what's coming from America, but most of what we received from when I was in Dorusk was driven in by people from all over Europe. One guy came with a 44-passenger bus filled with stuff from the Netherlands. And then after the stuff was unloaded, he took 44 people back with him, dropping them off in Poland, Germany, and eventually some to the Netherlands. And if there's one bright spot in this, and it's not even that, it's a less dark spot, I guess we would say, is many of the Ukrainians have relatives in Europe, throughout Europe. And so when I was at another border town, which I can't pronounce, but it's spelled Hrbenne, guy from Latvia and a person from Estonia came, and they picked up their relatives who were fleeing from Ukraine. And I took people to Warsaw train station, where they were going to go another 7 hours by train to like the German border to meet their relatives. So
in those cases, you do have that, Mark, right? You do, which is that, like you said, it's a godsend, right? But not everyone has that.
No, not everyone.
And even so, a refugee, I mean, we really have to put ourselves in their position. It's so hard to do, Mark. There, just a couple weeks ago, life was much different. And now all of a sudden, only what they can carry, often leaving behind the men and the family. And Mark, what's the long-term look here when it comes to a refugee? I mean, we don't know how long this conflict lasts, but do they even know if they're going home again, if they're going home to a home? What's the long-term?
The first thing is, you're right, Elizabeth, you're right. I mean, first of all, these women that are leaving don't know if their husbands, homes, or country will exist in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. They don't know. They don't know if they're ever going to be able to go home. They don't know if their husbands are going to be alive. They don't know if they're ever going to be reunited. So there's a lot of questions, and it's terrifying for these people. The other thing that's very important to know is that it's the city people are the ones that have relatives in other places. It's the rural people that are leaving that have nowhere to go. And you can definitely see the difference, not only in the clothing, the appearance, the luggage of, the people from the big cities and the people from these other less populated areas, especially in the east, that are getting bombed by the Russians. And I think one of the things that I think the best way for New Jersey people to relate to this, and I certainly did through this, was the Hurricane Sandy.
Right.
Which is almost akin to this. Like one day everything is normal, and the next day you've lost everything. You have nowhere to go. You don't have electricity. You can't access, money. You can't access media. And you're just lost. And I think
Right.
that I had covered I've covered a lot of the hurricane. When I was at the paper, and that's the thing that I really took away from it. That's what the blank stare, the 1,000-yard stare. These people like just in shock, the shock of displacement. That's what it reminded me of. That, and then the incredible amount of donations that came in, and
Yeah.
some of which are useless. Like old
Right.
clothes, stuffed animals, things that people, they don't know where they're going, and they have a limited ability to carry things.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah. And
So
then
you saw a
again,
similarity.
let me just
Yeah, go
finish
ahead,
this
finish.
thought.
Hmm.
In terms of people that might want to donate stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
The best thing you can donate are feminine hygiene products, diapers, and formula,
Sure.
and baby food, because that's who's coming. That's who's showing up.
Women and children. And so
Women and children.
as it relates to, what you see in people's eyes and the stress and the pain and the shock, you saw a lot of similarity, of course, different situation, but this idea that you suddenly lose everything and what happened in Sandy. You had mentioned, and you've written, by the way, for everyone who's listening, this great series of articles for NJ Spotlight News, I think it was, on your
Yes.
experience. And of course, I know you're going back, but you had mentioned this sort of addictive quality of disaster response. Talk about that, because you've done this before and now you're going back again, we know, to Poland. So what is it about it that you mention it as an addictive quality?
Oh, that's. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm prepared to go there. I mean, it's there's a part of it that is, oh, I want to do something that's good, and then
Yeah.
and I want to do something generous. As I told people, I'm not really going over there out of generosity and compassion. I'm going out of anger and disgust.
Oh, talk
More
about
than
that.
anything, right?
Talk
But
about that anger and disgust a little bit, Mark, because I think it's important that you did mention that in the article, that that's what you felt when you got there.
yeah, I mean, I just feel, and I know we don't want to go down a big political path, and I respect that, but I feel that this is the moment we've prepared for 70 years. We have all this, all these gadgets, all this stuff, anti-ballistic missiles and stuff, and Russia has invaded a democratized, westernized European nation, and that's what everything has been formed for. NATO and all that stuff. It's all about that. And so the fact that they don't belong to NATO is somewhat, to me, it's semantics.
Yeah.
So what do? We wait for him to destroy this country, and then he's going to go back into Poland. Oh, then we're going to fight him.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I mean, the misery, and I think it's interesting to me that when President Biden went there this week, and he saw the refugee crisis, his anger level kind of went up. And so I think that when you see it firsthand, these people that are just thrown to the wind by the megalomania of this one leader, who is trying to lay claim to a country that doesn't want to be claimed by him for the most
Right.
part.
Right.
It's kind of, you say to yourself in the simplest human terms, like, this is evil and wrong, and who's going to stop it? And I can tell you this from myself and every European that I met over there, we're asking the same question, which is, where are you guys? Like, not Americans, British, French, whoever they were. Where are we? Where are our governments to come in and alleviate this? And, there was a point in the war where he had Putin had his 40-mile convoy there stalled. It had about 80% of his military vehicles. And I think at that point you say, okay, we're going to give your soldiers a 2-hour head start to run. And then we're going to strafe this thing and destroy everything. And if you want to launch a nuclear bomb after that, you have nothing to defend your country with going forward.
Right.
You know, and that would have saved all this misery for all these people. Okay, so let me get off that soapbox, though.
No, but that's fair, Mark. I appreciate that you have that viewpoint, and I think it's important for people to hear that from someone that's been over there. You're also a military man, so you know it's a valid viewpoint and one that needs to be heard. I appreciate you sharing that.
I don't know a single person who feels that our response has been adequate. I think that everyone feels like this is what we've prepared for. This is why we have the $1 trillion military budgets. You know, where you have all this hardware, you know, these sophisticated systems, satellites up in the air, you know. And so how long do we, as a nation, how long do we deal with the Russian nuclear bluff? You know, how long does it go on? Yeah. And to me, you know, we have seen since the fall of the Iron Curtain, country after country after country become democratized, westernized. They enjoy a tremendous lifestyle improvement from when they were Soviet-owned, Soviet-ruled. And so Ukraine has brought that to Russia's doorstep. So the idea now would be, let's continue to move that into and allow the Russian people to be freed from this bondage of this incredibly corrupt, oppressive, you know, Soviet regime it's been 100 years for them.
Well, they're suffering too. And, you know, you make a point that there are many countries that are suffering, you know, Belarus, Russia, Ukraine. Now, Poland has to deal with this major influx of refugees. And of course, they're opening their arms and doing what they can, but it won't stop there. It'll go into Germany. It'll go into the rest of Europe. It's a humanitarian crisis that will touch many. We will see some come over here. And, you know, there's been talk of that, but this has only just begun, Mark. I mean, even if the war were to end in the next couple of weeks, for whatever reason, we now have to address the human suffering. How do you rebuild those lives? We're talking about, you know, just millions of people. Where do they go? So this has only begun, Mark. How do you, you know, when I told you the addictive quality, you sort of mentioned there's so much work to do that you keep going back. What do we do over here? You're going over there. Not everyone can do that. So what can we do as fellow human beings, frankly, who are hurting for these people?
One thing I'm extremely disappointed about, more than almost as much as no military action, is this idea that we're going to take 100,000 refugees. Right. You know, my God, it's a small percentage, and we don't even have yet a mechanism to get them in. I can't tell you how many families, you know, I live in Mountain Lakes, you know, my neighbors are like, oh, we'll take a family in. But there's going to be no mechanism to do that. You know, it hasn't been done yet. They're educated people. They are, they are in some ways better educated than us in sciences and things like that. They're hardworking people. Yeah. These are exactly the people you probably would want to bring into the country. And so let's start an airlift and bring in 500,000 and find these families. You know, we're here in America, you know, we have this big ocean between us. We can't drive a bus over there. You know, we can send stuff and we can send money, but we're not sure how much of that is going over and really, you know, whatever. And so this is an important thing. And I think that one of the things that is really important to mention here is that Poland, the Polish people, you know, their generosity is based also on their history. They've been here before. Yes, they've been given away to Hitler. They've been given away to Stalin. They've been there when nobody else was there. And, you know, in World War II, Britain and France had an agreement to defend them or help open up a second front and get the Germans distracted. They didn't do that. the puppeteers of the Great Four gave the country away after World War II, and they suffered under Soviet, rule for from 1945 or so to the early 90s. And in addition to that, in terms of Polish generosity, during World War II, there was a dispute border in which Ukrainians committed like a genocidal attempt on the Polish people in the border, and that's exactly where I was. That's
That's
exactly where
incredible.
these people are coming in. And
Wow.
so I think you cannot credit the Polish people enough.
I
I know
agree.
there's a lot of Polish people in New Jersey. They should be very
Yes.
proud of themselves. And
Yes. They're great
yeah, it's
people.
really something.
They're great people. Well, we are proud of you for doing what you can do, and I think that's
Thank
what
you,
it comes
but
down
it's
to.
unnecessary.
Well, and you're going back. I know you're going back. So hopefully you'll continue to report. And I think, someone listening to this today, hopefully it gives them an insight they're not always seeing. Mark, we're at a point where when we watch the news, we're not sure really what to believe anymore. And it's important that
Right.
we tell each other the truth from people that are actually there and don't have a particular axe to grind, if you will. So, let us know. We'll be watching your reporting as you can. I assume you'll be writing more about it, but I want to just thank you on behalf of the New Jersey people for doing that. I saw your pictures of driving a woman and her children to a train station. I mean, this is one by one, Mark, one by one, and that's what it really
Right.
is going to take from good people. So thank you so much, Mark. And one last word to New Jerseyans, the best way they can help.
I think, there's several organizations, Caritas, Caritas, that's the Catholic Relief Agency, the Polish Action Humanitarian group, they're very involved. There's a group called Folkowisko, and that's spelled Folkowisko. I'm going back with them to a different site, a warehouse where a lot of stuff has come in and out. If anybody Googles these names and they can see how they can help, money, where to send money, where to do whatever they can do. And I would also say, and we always talk about this, pressure our congressmen to say, hey, let's open the door here. Let's figure out how to get some of these people into our country and let them enjoy, our lifestyle and let them contribute to our country. The fact that Ukrainians are going to Mexico to try to go through the Mexican border just speaks of State Department. I don't know what.
Red
I
tape
shouldn't do
and
it.
just
Don't let me do it.
Yeah, I hear you, Mark. Well, that's a whole nother show. Let's put it that way. That's a whole nother show. Mark, once again, thank you very much for everything you're doing. And to everyone listening, please rewind and listen to the organizations he mentioned there, because you can Google them. And now you know that they're actually there. Mark has seen them. He's worked with them. He knows that they are valid. I think that's always important for us to have that kind of reference point. So, Mark, again, thank you on behalf of New Jersey and everybody that wishes they could help. We appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. And to my audience,